Today, I am breaking down the 2026 NFL Draft running back class. Let's jump right into this. If you guys are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I am doing a top 31 over on my Patreon. This is going to be a top 20. There are some running backs that you guys recommended over on Twitter that I ended up including in that, so feel free to go check that out. You guys have access to that, an extended tight ends video, as well as my big board and all of my draft evaluations, not just the letters, also the numbers. So feel free to go check that out. $5 a month, you get all of that, and I have audio as well. Let's get into this. Let's have a great time, starting out with how I grade the position. It's a 1 to 100 scale, but what does that mean? I break it down into tiers, basically showing the exact amount of workload they should be getting. And it's 1 to 100, sure, but 80 plus is going to be an RB1. There shouldn't really be anybody contending in terms of snaps. Maybe if you have a really good running back room, they can do it. But these running backs can be standalone, never have to have someone else taking reps from them. They're a true RB1 elite blue chip talent. Then I have that range 80 to 75. That's where I have it being a starting quality running back. RB1, RB2, someone who should be taking a notable amount of carries, being on the field for about 40 to 60+% of the snaps. And that's a really good range. That's exactly kind of the range where most classes have their top running back. This past class in 2025, we ended up having two backs that I ended up falling in love with to the degree where they were RB1 territory, which was Genty as well as Hampton. We do not have that in this one. But then we have the tier 3, which is that 75 to 70 tier, which is a committee back, somebody who guaranteed RB2, maybe an RB3 in that range, but somebody who will be in that rotation, no doubt. And that's where a lot of running backs are. Then we have that tier 4, which is going to be that 70 to 64 / all the way down into like that around that 60 range. These are the RB3 to 4 territory, maybe like really deep into that rotation, the backup tier. And then beyond that, there is one where it's like RB5 plus / not NFL tier. But how do we get there? We do it by categories, and it's vision, missed tackles forced. So vision, do you know where you're going? The play breaks down. Are you running into the ass of your offensive lineman? Are you running away from an open hole? Are you Trent Richardson? And if that's the case, you're going to get a low score. If you are not, you have guys like Ashton Genty and Martin Hampton last year. They could see the field. They understand what's happening. Quinshon Judkins is a great example of this. They understand how to process mid-play and know where to go, even when the play breaks down. That's how you score high on vision. Missed tackles forced. This is not just can you truck a dude over, can you juke a dude. It is all-encompassing. And you have to factor far more than the missed tackles forced per carry per PFF. That's not something I genuinely look at a ton. It is a really good reference as to if I'm seeing someone like, I don't think this guy's breaking that many tackles. I'll look over there. It's like, did he break it over the entire season? If the answer is no, then the stats line up with the eye test. At the end of the day, when you go to the NFL, your stats are 0 across the board. So if you're making missed tackles or you're making guys miss because they're just not making good tackles, probably not going to happen in the NFL where you're playing the best of the best defenders. But there are players who just genuinely know how to make guys miss in a phone booth, make guys miss on the move. There are some awesome players there. That's how you score well in missed tackles forced. Agility. Do you change directions on a dime? It's kind of hard for running backs not to score well in this category just because, if you can't, there are some, but if you can't, there's some concerns there. And then, of course, you have the receiving category. It's not necessarily can you just catch the ball. Do you run routes well? Do you have a sophisticated ability to try to make a linebacker make mistakes in coverage? And then also, do you catch the ball? So there's certain aspects in that. It's not necessarily a statistical category. It is very heavily focused on the eye test, seeing if you just know how to play the receiving position. Then long speed, self-explanatory. Can you turn and burn? Then you got burst. This is going to be that acceleration category. Are you able to basically move fast in a short space? That's very, very, very important for a lot of running back positions, unless your kind of sole goal is to just build speed up in a straight line. Like, very few running backs do that very well. Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry are probably the two most recently that have been able to do it successfully. Contact balance, super key category. If someone touches you, are you going to just like fall down? Guys are going to get their hands on you in the NFL. You need to be able to handle that type of contact and stay on your feet. So balance is a huge category. Fumbling. Are you reliable? If you fumble the ball, you get your ass benched in the NFL. It doesn't matter how good you are. There's certain players in this class that have fumbled 12 times over the past 3 years, which we'll talk about very soon on Patreon. But Yeah, safe to say, if you're not carrying the rock very well, you're most likely not going to be starting for very long. Then blocking. Certain backs are not able to block, which means on third downs, you are not going to be put in over someone who can. It's going to be very crucial to see how these, it's a lost art as well. You got guys like Travion Henderson last year who know how to block. You know for a damn fact that he's going to be in on third downs at the next level because he is going to be a reliable asset. Also, he can take it to the house. I think on third down, the most valuable asset is, can you pass block and can you churn out the extra yards? Because most likely it's probably not 3rd and 10. If it is, you need a pass block. If it's not, I need you to push and get those short yards. And then, of course, the it factor, there's a plus or minus in there. Do you have like a poor motor? Are you not really trying? Or the opposite, are you hauling ass and making sure on every RPO the defense thinks that you are just taking the ball? I love players who do that. There's just a lot of little factors in there that maybe I couldn't include. And I also do have a frame factor that's not included. This time, I used to say, don't think too much about dream fit. I actually tried to think this one out a little bit. I don't want to have a repeat for every tier. I only shrunk it down to 1 because I want to say, hey, this is kind of like a prediction, a dream fit. So let's talk about number 20 and welcoming in all of our actual YouTube viewers. I just talked about 11 running backs on the Patreon, which you guys are probably going to ask, where are the Baylor guys? Well, 21 was one of the Baylor guys and one of them before as well. So shout out to Bryson Washington. Really, really like his game, but I do think that he's still growing and polishing into the NFL running back that he is. This is a grade of what they are right now. It's also fun to see how they grow, how they develop in terms of the rankings. So I do think it's going to be super key for us to be able to continue to focus on that. For Jonah Coleman, this is someone who I really believe is going to take a massive meteoric rise up because you're looking at the long speed and the burst. He's actually ended up showing on his X as well as his Instagram, he's been shedding a lot of fat, and it's amazing to see. So I do think Jonah Coleman, when all is said and done, will end up being probably 10, 9 on my board. Maybe he might even be as high as 5 because Jonah Coleman, coming into the year from what he was at Arizona, would have been my number 2 running back in this class. So I do want to put that out there. I think he took a massive step back when he went to Washington. I don't know what was going on outside of this, but I do see him really taking that big step back up. So again, right now, I have some issues with Jonah Coleman, but this is something where based on his overall performance, I do think that if he ends up going to the NFL right now, based on how he was at the end of last year, there's some concerns. Let's talk about his game versus Penn State. So he flashes some really solid vision and explosiveness. So, he still has it in him, but he's willing to put the shoulder down. I love running backs that like to be aggressive. He's definitely a lot slower in open space as a receiving option. Ended up being the case in terms of the full option. And for you guys wondering what the letters mean, C is NFL adequate. That's what I end up saying. Like if you're a C or above, it's perfectly fine. You want to be B's and above, or like B minuses and above, because that's where it's like good. But you're not going to be complaining too much. It's the D's and the F's that you really need to focus on. But regardless, he randomly becomes 10 times the athlete that he is with the ball in his hands. It is so weird. Has some fluctuations with his change of direction ability. Definitely has some questions about his athleticism. He adjusts well in real time to blocking slip-ups. So really good in terms of actually being able to process real-time information and make strong and good decisions. Regardless, he has a hard time breaking tackles in open space, which wasn't a big issue for him at Arizona, which really bothers me because, again, I do think it was a little bit more of his lack of athleticism. Maybe he added some extra LBs that he didn't want to. I'm hoping that, again, with that reduction in his body fat percentage, he ends up being able to be on the right track. But regardless, he can shed weaker tackles at full speed, but loses the ability to change direction. Shoulder chips are weaker than expected. So blocking, when you end up chip blocking, it's weaker than expected. And he usually ends up losing and ends up actually being chipped backwards. He has a heavy split of carries. So there was another running back that was taking some heavy splits in there. Very underwhelmed compared to how he was at Arizona. And that's just like the bottom line with Jonah Coleman, someone who I do see, you see the mental foundation there, right? He can take contact, stay on his feet. He ends up knowing where to go and processing in real time. And he can make people miss. But for some reason, it looked like the athletic potential that he had really took a dip. And I'm excited to see it bounce back up because I think once that happens, you see the long speed jump, you see the burst jump. And then with that, if you see the agility jump as well, all of a sudden he has the tools to be able to process and make guys miss better in open field the way he did at Arizona. So I have a lot of faith in Jonah Coleman, but I will also say I am still genuinely terrified at the fact that you see that legitimate drop off. And I don't understand why. I don't like seeing running backs take drop-offs when they're still sticking with the same coach, just going to a new school. Let's talk about number 19. Feathers ruffled. I already know this. I'm pissing some people off the bat. Nick Singleton. I talked about this over on Patreon. I'm not a huge fan of backs that are straight line because I think there's very few that have worked out. I think, Braylon Allen is the perfect example of what I think Nick Singleton could be. Like a really high-end backup that is going to have some games where he pops off. But unfortunately, I believe Braylon Allen's been dealing with more of the health concerns than anything. But I digress. Sorry, I was thinking of Isaac Guerrero. But for Nick Singleton specifically, tell me if you disagree with any of this. His vision's okay. He can make some guys miss. He is not agile because he is a really good straight line back. He builds up speed. He has really good burst, but he just cannot change direction to save the life of him. He's a solid receiving back as well, can run some routes, has some solid hands. He's a reliable player in terms of, keeping the ball in his hands. He can take some contact, but he's not necessarily going to be a Cam Scatabo bouncing off a bunch of tackles. And he's just not a good blocker. If you agree with that, which I think a lot of people will, like some people just really value this skill set, then we're just on the same page. We just value it differently. I'm not a big guy for straight line backs. I like being able to see some wiggle to my players. I don't think there's that many systems in the NFL that genuinely can utilize Nick Singleton properly. But if they can, I think Nick Singleton's a damn good back. So keep it in mind. I think if you're in the perfect situation for yourself, you can add 10 points to their grade, where Nick Singleton right now is at 63.75, which right now is that RB3/4 territory. And I think in the right situation, he is damn good, damn near being an RB2 in that room. So again, want to emphasize that. But let's talk about his game versus Oregon. He's a smooth mover, not overly explosive. Ended up changing my mind on that. And again, if you guys are new to the show, these are just notes where I write them for myself. You guys just like the context. He fumbled a jet sweep. Not a big issue. He doesn't fumble very often. Definitely more of a smooth mover than necessarily a fast, but he rounded an angle, but there is some fluidity that shows through his momentum maintenance. So guys will be able to hit him. He ends up even going around a corner, maintaining his speed. So he can keep it up, but he just can't change the direction. Had a receiving touchdown on a seam route. Had an okay chip block. He's a poor lead blocker. He showed his lack of ability to change a direction on an outside zone. Ran into a defender, but at least stayed on his feet. Deployed a stiff arm for a missed tackle. Just feels relatively mediocre outside of that. And ending off the game with a bad pass blocking rep. So, like Nick Singleton, bottom line, has a lot of really positive traits. If your system really values a straight line back, he's going to be great for you. But there's just a limitation to his ability where I value pass pro. I value the ability to change directions in a way that I can't necessarily buy fully in on Nick Singleton. I know a lot of people have him as RB2, RB1, RB5, but I've watched 100 games of Nick Singleton. Not actually, but I've watched every game because I literally am trying to like him more. And I like the athlete that he is. But it's just everyone I've talked to agrees he cannot change directions. That's something for me is almost something that I cannot buy in on unless you are the exception. And I don't know if Nick Singleton's the exception unless he goes to the right system where you can use him as a straight line back, a home run hitter that can kind of use that 220 properly. And if you guys ended up realizing, you're like, why the hell is the grade at like 63? It's actually a 67. So you know what? Actually, in the right system, Nick Singleton's going to be a lot higher. But regardless, I think Nick Singleton's a really solid back. Let's talk about his buddy here in Kaytron Allen, though. Kaytron's a fun back. I mean, I think these guys complement each other literally perfectly. So it's a great spot to be in. I don't value long speed at the same level that maybe some others do. So I think Kaytron still has a legitimate role in the NFL, but he's still someone is very role specific. But let's talk about his game versus Notre Dame. He flashed as a receiver on a hitch route, which is funny, but he ended up slipping a tackle, definitely more quick than fast. I mean, his nickname's Fat Man. Does a nice job handling contact. Off the bat, he has some reps that clearly pop more on a down-by-down basis than Singleton does. Singleton is more of the home run hitter type, right? Definitely a low top-end speed, so low ceiling in terms of the athletic potential. His vision's okay. He definitely can overcomplicate or over-adjust. Definitely a low ceiling, but a solid floor as a power runner. Like if you need someone who's going to be a goal line back, someone who's going to just kind of take care of the ball, be a good third down back, that's what Kaytron Allen is. And, when you have ancient Zeke playing, like when he was playing the NFL, I feel like it's very similar to what Kaytron Allen will be. And that's fine. I mean, there's a role for that. And he'll end up actually probably getting 1 to 2 touchdowns a year. Just, I think the amount of carries might be a little more limited. Talk about Jaydn Ott next. And Ott, transferring to Oklahoma from Cal, had a huge down year after a really solid year in 2023. But let's talk about his game versus SMU, Pony Up. The one game at SMU I was not able to see in person. That really pisses me off because now that I know I like all these Cal players, I'm like, really? I'm like, come on, man. I really would have loved to have seen Ott, Jaivian Thomas, who we will be talking about in this, as well as like Mendoza, and then of course, the Cal defensive guys. I ended up loving them. But has some instant acceleration, which is good to see. He flashes a little bit as a blocker from time to time. His top speed certainly is lacking. The O-line and scheme overall suck. I ended up posting about this over on Twitter, so you guys can feel free to go follow me over there because I post all 22 clips. But it's just like every time he got the ball, the offensive line would just, like SMU would be in the backfield instantly. And I'm like, I know we had some good defensive linemen like Jared Harrison Hunt, Elijah Roberts, just to name 2. But it was like, this is embarrassing. I mean, Jaydn Ott couldn't do anything. It wasn't his fault. So the offensive line definitely was bothering me this game. He has really solid patience, which I would not be patient behind the offensive line. Could be more decisive. He does tend to freeze up a little bit too much. So almost like patient to a fault. He is not the problem overall, though, because the offensive line certainly ended up hurting him. Vision overall was really solid, even given those issues. It said quarterback's doing well. He got sat on his ass. Oh, okay. So he got sat on his ass in pass protection. It is what it is. Okay. This was actually when Mendoza ended up sitting out or he wasn't in this game. So I guess I didn't miss out on Mendoza. It was the backup QB, who I think is like a 5th year as well. The poor guy hasn't had a chance to start. I hope he does this year. But Jaydn Ott got sat on his ass in pass pro. And I said the blocking ended up falling off a cliff overall. Very underwhelmed, but his fall off is just far from his fault. I think that's the biggest thing, is that his drop in production, it's not a Jaydn Ott issue. But I still think that there is some contributing factors there. He's not a great athlete. I think that he's a little bit more of the one-cut back style, which has its potential. It has its value. But I do think that Oklahoma, he'll have a much better time. Now let's talk about Mark Fletcher. And I almost did a top 15 running back video. Started out the video by pretty much saying like, oh, I'll do a top 15. It's like, nah, top 20. I'll do top 20. Because I want to talk about Mark Fletcher because I like him a lot. Like, I wanted to talk about him. I needed to talk about Coleman, Singleton, etc. So, you guys are getting a little bit longer of a video than I initially planned. But let's talk about his game versus Florida State for Mark Fletcher. He has some short range, straight line burst. So, basically, if he's just running in a straight line, he can end up accelerating pretty well. Has some fun movement skills for his size. He's 225, which is excellent. Not a fan so far. The contact balance ended up being better as the game went on. He runs really hard, though. That's one of the things I like about him. He runs with some tenacity, and he always has a really good, really high intensity to his playing, which I love that. It's a really good motor to have. Would like for him to be better at shedding poor tackles. He ran to the back of the offensive lineman on 3rd and 8. Not a fan of that. If I'm not mistaken, there was an ability to bounce out on that play. And he ended up choosing to run into the back of the offensive lineman, which funnily enough ended up still getting 7 yards because it ended up being a 4th and 1 and he ran it again and got the first down. So it ended up working out. But I'm like, in the NFL, if you have the clear opportunity where the edge rusher did not stay home, did not contain his edge properly, you hit that edge, especially with the speed that he has, the athletic profile. But he ended up getting lucky on that. His balance got a bit better as the game went on. He's not been great as a blocker. adequate. That's what the C grade means. He had a nice extension catch, so a full extension grab. Has some really fun flashes. Would be fun to replace Derrick Henry. Like that was something that I ended up thinking about. I ended up giving the Ravens 2 different backs in this as well for the dream fit. So I didn't want to continue testing that out. But Mark Fletcher's a really fun back. Problem is, the dude needs to stop fumbling. If I'm not mistaken, it's like a 1 every 50 to 60 touch. And it's just, you can't do that. You can't do that in the NFL. You get your ass benched. But let's talk about Noah Whittington at number 15. Some people have him as a UDFA. He's an experienced back. He's fun. So let's talk about him. I really like what he can bring to the table, and he's an amazing compliment for Makhi Hughes, who we'll talk about later in this episode. But talking about his game versus Penn State. He slipped off an arm tackle and regained his balance to start out the game, which is nice. Shows some really good twitch, which that A- for the burst is top tier. He ran into a defender. Not a fan of that. You usually try to run away from defenders. If you try to make a move towards them, again, choosing the path of most resistance is not a great way to get a high vision grade from me. But he has really good athletic traits. He poorly tracked a pass. So the pass was like, he just ended up not knowing where it was going. It's a minute thing. Like if you really start criticizing whether you can track a deep pass or not, you know that you don't have too many concerns of him as a route runner, which there you go. Nice route running as a receiver, I meant. So he has some nice route running. He did an amazing job with a hesitation behind the offensive lineman to freeze an incoming safety for a big gain. I ended up posting this on X as well. He was running up into the hole, and basically the safety was coming downhill, and he was right here. He ended up, so remember, there's a blocker right here as well. So blocker, safety coming down. He ended up faking to this side, making the safety go here, and ended up cutting this way, allowing him to have an open lane, which I loved to see that. I hope you guys ended up seeing that, but basically faked here, ended up going here, freezing the safety, and allowed him to have a wide open gain. So I love the fact he did that. The vision did not stay consistent, but it's still good to see that he could do that. Seems to have an issue changing direction at a high speed. Did not see an unblocked defender, so not a fan of that. Certain guys know how to handle instant pressure. They know how to process what's going on. Top speed is not home run worthy based on some of his high speed routes. So, he ended up, when he ran fast on his routes, I didn't end up seeing him being able to churn and burn, but it's still a very good athletic profile. Uses burst quite well to break defenders' angles, especially defensive linemen. So he ends up, varying his speed a little bit and then accelerating, and, the angle the defender was taking no longer applies, which is very good to have. Looks like one of those backs that can randomly have a great game and then fades away into being a backup again, which is, what you kind of want from an RB3. Now let's talk about Jaivian Thomas. Love this guy. He has not had a big workload whatsoever, so keep that in mind. But let's talk about his game versus NC State. He flashes some really good top-end speed. He had a nice patient home run touchdown. I ended up posting that on X. He's a really fun back, like really good back. Definitely a combo of home run and one cut, which definitely has a place in the NFL. He had a nice touchdown. He has a second nice touchdown. I would say he's inconsistent, but his high-end reps are straight deployable for the NFL. Like he's just ready to be able to be NFL. Those reps are like something that you want from your NFL running back, I should say. Not showing really much in terms of blocking, but he ended up flashing more as the game went on. I thought overall he had huge upside. Again, when you're 190, you're not going to be an elite blocker. The problem with Jaivian, again, is just, fumbling at a sub 100 carry rate. That to me, like when you have 100 touches, you need to fumble once. That's where I start feeling comfortable with you, is every 100 times you touch the ball, you fumble once. I want it less than that, but it's perfectly fine at that point. Jaivian needs to watch out for that. But of course, we're going to see this year with a much larger workload since Jaydn Ott's gone, if he can end up really stepping up, which again, without some of your top weapons, it's going to be pretty tough. Losing Endries, losing Mendoza, losing Ott. We're going to see what happens there. Darius Taylor is next at 13. I mean, again, a really solid back overall, but a lot of people I've talked to quote Darius Taylor as the most boring running back in the class, and I'm not going to disagree with them too much. But let's talk about his game versus Penn State. Flashing excellent contact balance on his first carry. He's able to shed contact in open field. Change of direction looks a little bit challenging. Not an amazing athlete off the bat. good patience and burst to get a first down. He ended up actually having a wildcat rep as well, ended up hurdling a guy. Love that. So that's cool. But he turned into a defender over running into an open lane. So I ended up, I believe, talking about this earlier in the episode. I don't know if you guys ended up seeing it on YouTube or not. I'm forgetting which player I was talking about. But, if you end up having your Trent Richardson moment where you run into defenders over like a wide open lane, you cannot get a good vision grade from me. I hate to say it, when the choice is obvious and you make the wrong decision, it's just pretty obvious. The NFL, the choices are not so obvious. Bottom line, there you go. He's been a non-factor as a blocker for the most part. He over jump cuts holes and gets himself out of position. So, like, when you end up making a move, you try to do it to get yourself in a better position than you were in. And if you end up jump cutting to get into a hole, by all means. But he couldn't control how far he went. So he would you think about defenders over pursuing a runner. It's the exact applicable way for a running back. He over pursued the open lane and ended up getting himself out of position by doing that, which doesn't help anybody, especially not himself. His vision is his worst trait. His hands overall have been actually pretty reliable as well as a catcher. Definitely some good traits, but not necessarily NFL ready in terms of the processing. At least he's young enough and has enough time. So reliable back, definitely somebody with a high potential, but I do kind of think that he should be in like the Audric Estime role as a power runner that, has the upside to develop into more as he ends up processing the game better. Jam Miller is next, and I did not expect for him to be my number 12 running back in the class, but I mean, he's just a really solid running back, like a really solid one. I was hoping to like Justice Haynes better, but Jam Miller popped out. And let's talk about his game versus Auburn because he had 28 carries. And shout out to Auburn, by the way. I don't know what their defensive coordinator does. All of their players are very well disciplined. Like they just know how to play football and play it at a very high level. So it's so good to see how like these players play against Auburn because I mean, it's just a defense that knows what they're doing. It's surprising. But this is a game where he had 28 carries, really good to be able to showcase for you guys as well. He started out not popping off as an athlete, which is funny because he actually is a very good one. It's just his level of like intensity kind of changes based on the play. I don't understand. Ended up seeing, I almost call him Marshall Falk, but Keldrick Falk. He's a really good player. We're actually studying the edge class right now. We as in me, myself, and I. And he's already graded. Just going to say, pretty solid grade for him. Flash of nice burst on a big run. Really nice contact balance, but not much in terms of missed tackles forced, which was my biggest issue with him. Like he'd end up having a 2 or 3 missed tackle force carry, and then he just wouldn't break a tackle for the next 15. And I'm like, why? Because you have the athletic ability to do so. It's really weird when you see a player like that. Really solid angle route with a head fake too. It's like, I ended up seeing that. I'm like, what the hell? That's like, he did it at the receiver level. Like, you think about an angle route right there. Like, that's a straight up, very difficult route to run at an efficient level in college. And he did it very well. Like, I almost gave him a higher grade in receiving. It's incredible. And he's 220 pounds. I was like, what the hell? But regardless, get back to it. He's really smooth as a mover as well. Not doing too much as a blocker, ends up not really doing much at all, unfortunately. He ended up lunging and missing a pass block. So, again, at 220, you're hoping for him to be better in that. And at least he has the, in terms of physics, he has the ability to end up handling a lot more than some of these smaller backs. But he has the movement skills and balance to make guys miss, but he just does not use it properly. I said, I don't know if it could be improved enough at the next level, which I know Trevor Sikkema, shout out to NFL Stock Exchange. They ended up talking about like translatable, I believe, stable metrics, and missed tackles forced per carry is a legitimate guide to go off of. And Jam Miller does not have a very high missed tackles forced per carry. But yeah, it's something that I'm a little bit worried about. But in this instance, because of the fact that I see a lot of like athletic potential for it to happen, I think it definitely could improve. It's just, I don't know about the sample size that's worked in the NFL. Like with this type of ability, with the lack of ability in terms of missed tackles forced. His vision's been pretty damn solid. Auburn's defense has been very disciplined. So that's something where I also think Jam Miller in the SEC, Like a lot of defensive coordinators know how to like just keep their defenders honed in where they're not overthinking, not overcommitting. Like it makes it very difficult for college running backs who are used to taking advantage of guys taking poor angles, poor tackles to be able to make them miss. So it's good that Jam Miller's being able to actually have some pretty translatable to NFL games. But at the same time, you're also seeing, the lack of ability to make people miss. Another block that he ended up whiffing as a lead blocker this time, his vision ended up dipping a little bit, but I said overall, I'm very impressed with the flexibility and the tools to develop. I'm just worried because I don't understand why he is not better at making guys miss. He has the athletic potential and shows even as a route runner to be able to make guys, second guess what they're thinking, but it's a little bit concerning. But let's talk about CJ Donaldson, formerly out of West Virginia, transferred to the Ohio State University. A dream build, 6'2", 237, and this guy is lean. Like, he looks 220, and it's great to have that ability. But let's talk about his game versus Baylor. He was the clear RB2 at West Virginia. I'm excited to see him take more of a starting role. But he flashed some vision, but could not be a safety when he was one-on-one. So I was talking about this earlier in the episode about a player basically not being able to make someone miss in one-on-one. If you're a corner or a defensive back and you're a running back that is 240 especially, you need to punish them. You need to at least make them almost miss. And I don't like it when you don't do that. But he bounced outside near the goal line when he should have just ended up being a battering ram at the line of scrimmage. Just like sometimes you just got to Frank Gore it out and just destroy the line of scrimmage and use your weight and use your momentum to push to get those extra yards rather than trying to overthink it and bouncing it out. He has some quicks to him. I do worry a little bit about the long speed. Ended up not being the case. But he bounced into an open spot, ended up having two defenders into it. So his vision certainly is a little bit iffy from time to time. Ended up, he ended up seeing it being a clear lane. I remember this. And then it just ended up being a mismatch of defenders versus blockers in that range. So it was a good initial decision, but he just didn't see past the line of scrimmage and just kind of process what was going on, which you might say, like, Alex, that's so overcomplicated, dude. Like, why are you saying this? But I think it's very key. You look at top end running backs, they understand the process of where the defense is going to be, how the defense reacts. Like, it is something that you have to think about if you're talking about a player at this level. Like, it is something that you need to worry about. But let's continue on. He has some quicks to him. I said I really want some more missed tackles force ability. Ended up having an easy touchdown run for himself. Surprisingly has fluidity to him on some hitch routes as well as like a receiver. He actually runs routes pretty well. He knows where to line up to block. He just doesn't hit as hard as he should. I said he had a shitty open field block attempt, so not a fan of that. Like, you are sometimes, if you're running a swing route, running a wheel, and maybe the flat receiver ends up catching the ball, you need to be able to block. But he's not too shabby a route runner. He does have a little bit of a stutter when he runs, though. Like, when he's about to cut, he likes to stutter his feet. It's like, cut that out. Like, if you're telling the defender you're going to cut, they're kind of just like waiting now. But I said overall has some legit potential given his frame, but really needs to improve the finer details before being considered a legit NFL back, which, in my opinion, going to Ohio State could end up really benefiting him in that category. Funnily enough, we're going to talk about another West Virginia back soon. Anthony Hankerson at number 10 surprised me. He was the last running back I studied. Shout out to Broshmo, who had him higher even than I did. But Anthony Hankerson's a very intriguing player there from Oregon State, 5'8", 200 pounds. He looks like he's 180, but he doesn't play like he's 180. He does play like he's 200 and, runs like he's 180. I love that combination. As a Steelers fan, especially seeing the long hair with him too, kind of reminded me of Anthony McFarland, but maybe at a better level. So let's talk about his overall game. Let's talk about him versus Oregon as well. So first off, he's fluid and athletic. He ended up separating with some good speed on a wheel route. Needs to shed a lighter contact better, but ended up being pretty good at that. He ended up juggling a flat route for an incompletion. Ended up actually being really good in terms of hands. It was just a one-time thing. I think he was moving at full speed. But regardless, ended up actually having a nice low block. So, when you're going out for the legs, there's a player that we will talk about at number 1. So, spoiler alert, Jeremiyah Love is not, but he's very close. But, certain players, when you're smaller, you will go and dive for the legs because you're not going to end up going for someone who's literally 50 pounds heavier than you with a standard block technique. But that works. I mean, your job is not necessarily be an extra offensive lineman. It is stop or slow the linebacker slash blitzer in general. And I think Anthony Hankerson does a really good job at it. Like, you have to have good technique, good timing, and because those defenders can just straight up wait for you to dive and then they have a clear lane. So if you do it right, you do it well. If you do it wrong, you're an absolute liability, which Anthony Hankerson is not. He is extremely twitchy. He ended up flashing as well as a route runner. Ended up having a one-hand snag that ended up easily making up for the bobble. His vision has been kind of mid, so I'm not a fan of that. Definitely has a future, but I don't know what role that would be in terms of the depth chart wise. So I do think he could be a committee back. I think as a scat back, he's going to be really solid. And even as a third down back, because he can end up chip blocking so well and going for the low blocks, like, that's a really good trait to have. I would just love to see him, like, especially for like the Niners and an Elijah Mitchell role, and making the holes a lot easier for Anthony Hankerson to deal with. So, I mean, allowing Trent Williams to lead the way and just let Anthony Hankerson just say, follow that guy. If you do that, everything else is an amazing foundation. Again, would really want for him to fumble like less than 100, like once per 100, but you're talking about a nitpick at that point. 9 is Terion Stewart. So funnily enough, spoiler, Brocho and I have 4 out of the top 10 in the exact same order, the exact same place. So really cool to see that. Terion Stewart is one of them. I really like my comp for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Let's talk about his game versus Texas A&M. By the way, transfer from Bowling Green to Virginia Tech. So I ended up saying, oh, he's super quick with his micro adjustments and has some really good vision. He ended up doing it again, showing some really good contact balance as well. I posted those clips over on X. His top speed looks extremely capped, but he was coming off an injury this game. So, a little bit of a star there. Still definitely capped. But regardless, he ended up whiffing on a block. He could have just stayed in place and waited for the defender to come to him, but instead he was assertive as a blocker and ended up missing. Sometimes you just don't need to win the blocking rep. You just need to not lose it. And when you're over aggressive, especially when you're not necessarily the best athlete, nor the tallest one either, if you're like 6'3", it's like you're not going to get hurdled. When you're a 5'9" guy and you're charging at somebody, you're kind of asking to just eat the dirt, eat the grass, but I digress. But regardless, he ended up having a spin move that led to a really good missed tackle forced. He ends up making dudes miss crazily. So like, it's very easy for him to make guys miss, especially with the lower athletic ceiling. It was very surprising. Like, this is also, I made that same comment with Dawson Pendergrass. So if you guys do want to hear my analysis on him, go over and join the Discord, or not the Discord, excuse me. You can do that too, but the Patreon. But let's get back to it. He tenses up a little bit too much in pass protection. Like I was talking about, sometimes you just got to keep it calm and chill. But he ends up tensing up a little bit too much there. And I end up saying 6 is used as the catching back. So the other back is used as the receiving back. It was pretty clear in terms of receiving downs. Terion Stewart was not used. He was subbed out. And I end up saying, see some Clyde Edwards-Helaire to him. And I definitely think he could end up being a mid-round pick, which is exactly what this grade and this role tends to be. Like, just, it really does feel like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I really like that comp. And number 8 is Desmond Reid. So, Terion Stewart was Schmo's 9. Reid was his 8 as well. Such a weird build. Such a bad build. 5'8", 175. But I got to see Desmond Reid in person, and he passed the eye test there. He is really fun to watch. Let's talk about his game, though, versus Clemson. Surprising lower top speed than I anticipated for his size. Big bounce out run with nice change of direction and vision. And I said, kind of like, he ended up starting out the game, ended up changing this, of course. He kind of started out the game as a pretty bad receiver, ended up, again, changing that. And I said, have not seen too much missed tackle force ability. He seems to be more of an angle breaker, not angle. Can make guys miss in a phone booth, but he loses the speed he has. So he's kind of just stuck in place, making a guy miss rather than being able to continue the momentum and gain more yards instantly after. But I think that's kind of key to note. Open field vision has been absolutely stellar. And I said, I need to take back what I said about him as a receiver. He just route faked into a seam for a huge gain. Ended up having a good whip route with catching traffic. I ended up saying I'd take it back. I take my earlier comment back. Has been surprisingly not shit as a blocker as well. But of course, at 175, it's just not very translatable. I said he pops more as an athlete later in the game, which is good to see. So good endurance there. And I said overall solid performance, just the first drive was not great. And that's why you need to watch all the reps. You can't watch highlights. You can't watch lowlights. You have to be able to watch the whole game through. And Desmond Reid, especially as that receiving back, I think has a ton of potential. Someone who I really like to see as that early day 3 pick. And I think he'll be great there. Jadarian Price shocked me. He's number 7 out of Notre Dame, 5'11", 202. Like, we'll talk about his game versus Georgia here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this. And I think you guys will 100% agree with my analysis. I just think I value some of the traits more than maybe some others do, because I know that Shmo has him at like RB14, but he has really good twitch off the bat. Certainly some slip ups with the offensive line play that ended up leading to not necessarily the best performance, but really good lead blocker, which is surprising. Some smooth routes as well. He had a nice bounce out showing great change of direction, burst, and speed. So the athletic profile there was great. Athleticism is a huge asset. It can hamper his vision, causing unnecessary bounce outs, though. I know people have commented that on Twitter. It was great to see after I ended up having that like initial thought process that people confirmed it. I said he ended up having a truck. He ended up trucking a guy, excuse me, but the missed tackle force ability does not necessarily look too translatable. More so, he can break college tackles, not maybe the NFL ones. Ran into the back of his offensive lineman because he ended up running way too fast and did not have the patience to let it develop. So that's a big thing with vision. Ended up talking about someone in Hollywood Smothers earlier in the episode as well over on Patreon, which had a very similar issue. Would have a better game without these poor whiffed blocks. So, I mean, I think he ends up having the offensive lineman ended up having some pretty bad blocks that just ended up not developing. And I said, overall, he's a solid running back with legit upside. He could end up being a steal and even a possible starter. And to be fair, he's stuck behind one of the best pairings for Jadarian Price, someone who's super smart and has a really good athletic profile as well. There in Jeremiyah Love, who we'll talk about later in this episode. But Jadarian Price is a great athlete who's reliable, who can block, and who knows how to be able to be a good receiving back. He's kind of the ideal guy to have on third down, unless you see him bounce the ball out too much, which, if you do that, of course, which he does, he can end up getting you stuck in a pretty bad situation. Sometimes you just got to admit that it's, you just got to cut it off right there. I can almost guarantee you that 98, if not 99% of y'all have never heard of this back at number 6. And shout out to Billy. I think his name's Billy over on X for talking about this. He loves scouting even FCS guys. And I don't know, that guy is more crazy than I am. Kanye Udoh. He's right now at Arizona State, but he was at Army. Crazy. But honestly, I love this fit, by the way. I mean, to replace Cam Scatterbo, I love it. And I think this is a little bit more of an early career Le'Veon Bell because Le'Veon's vision was just impeccable. But I also give a lot of credit, or maybe credit for the lack of polish in terms of vision to Army's offense, which is very much just charge. I mean, kind of like an Army thing to do. But let's talk about Kanye Udoh versus Notre Dame. It was really good to see, again, a game that was so translatable. You could talk about multiple different teams facing this. And Notre Dame knows the run is coming, right? So you're seeing production even with them talking about, or them knowing exactly what they're going to do. He has a really good motor off the bat, really good movement ability. I mean, he's 6'1", 220. He's fluid. He's extremely explosive. And he's just very polished as a mover. Flashes really good contact balance. Great contact balance after getting stuffed and ended up bouncing out for a big gain. He did not have the speed for the corner, but showed a lot of explosiveness. He has some Le'Veon Bell to him with the with his build, movement, and patience. I've been already talking for well over an hour into this episode, so forgive me for having some slip ups. He flashed on an out route, which is not surprising given his fluidity, which again, Army, you don't get to see a lot of the receiving ability. So that's why his grade's not necessarily as high, but shows some ability to run some routes. He's an excellent pass blocker. His vision's not extremely an asset, but Army is not the most sophisticated system. So there will be that learning curve, which I think at ASU, he'll end up having that ability to really soak up the knowledge the way Scatterbo did. He's able to make guys miss an open field, but not very polished with those moves. So again, I see a lot of growth potential with Udoh, especially in those areas of the finer details that I don't think Army is really training their guys to be NFL ready. His pass blocking ended up dipping just a little bit. He needs to consistently use his hands rather than just his body. Definitely a super high ceiling, just has a lot to learn, which at ASU, again, I love the role that he's going into. I think he has an excellent foundation to be a star. Just, again, the finer details he's still growing on. Talk about LeVeon Moss next, and he's so close to being a starter that I'm fine leaving the grade like this. Without the injury, I think he would be graded as a starter for me, so I'm gonna leave it. But let's talk about his game versus Florida. I mean, this guy took me by surprise. Again, just I don't know why he fumbles so much. But talk about his game versus Florida. Nice navigation between a tight gap, so doing a really solid job overall. Has explosiveness and speed with vision. Not a great rep at wide receiver. Again, ended up actually doing pretty good. And I said he ended up not having a bad out route. And I said he had a really nice angle route. And he improved overall as a receiver as the game went on. He chooses the right holes when the failures come from blocking inefficiencies. So I like the fact he has good risk management, damage control. He flashed great contact balance on an outside run. Very heavy rotation with some of the running backs they had there. Ended up missing a blitzer on a block. Nice cut outside. Not a good tracker as a blocker in space. And if you guys are like wondering what the hell does that mean? You know, if you're trying to look to block somebody and they're moving, you need to know where they're going. Because if you aren't in front of them, you're not going to block them, right? Or if you're not in the right spot, they have an angle that you shouldn't be giving them. So he's just not a good blocker at all. They said used when backed up to the one over the other two backs. I really like seeing that. So when, everything's on the line and they need to give someone a carry, they gave it to LeVeon Moss, and he ended up breaking a huge run with some really good contact balance. I posted that on X. Like, you can end up understanding what the offense is, or like what the role you should have in the NFL based on how much does your offense coordinator trust you. And this is a situational thing where LeVeon Moss was looked at and said, we trust you over our other backs when the most is on the line. We're on the 1 yard line. We're damn near going to get a safety and we're giving you the ball. I love that. I love that for LeVeon Moss. But I digress. Getting back to it. He's very decisive. And I said he finally had a mediocre read of the field. Like, I was waiting for him to have a poor decision. So, like, he makes a decision off the bat. Sometimes I want him to be a little bit more patient in that regard. But given the ball on 4th and 1, ended up getting a first down. So, again, talk about situational ball. I understand why he doesn't, but I would like a little bit more patience for some pull blockers. And I said he was patient. After that, ended up finding a big hole for a big gain. So it was good that he ended up having that adjustment mid-game. I said ridiculous contact balance. Very impressed. Just bottom line, stop fumbling. Stop fumbling and learn how to block a little bit better. Now let's talk. Oh, spoiler alert for number 3. Yeah, that's going to piss some people off. Number 4, we have Makhi Hughes. Talk about his game versus Florida. Shitty flea flicker off the bat. Who gives a shit? He's a transfer from Tulane to Oregon, by the way. He ended up slipping under an engaged defender. I said it was very exciting because the blocker, his lineman, was engaged with a defender, and he actually slipped between both of them because he couldn't get around him. He just slipped between the two. I was like, what the hell was that? It looked like Darren Sproles, but he's 5'11", so it's extremely intriguing to see. He's very much willing to lower the shoulder. And from the people I've talked to, that's their biggest issue with him is how willing he is. Like sometimes he goes just for the shoulder rather than necessarily trying to make guys miss. He's willing to stand in and take on blitzers, which is good to see. He's in a very heavy rotation there at Tulane. Adjusted his flat for a seam route. So he was running a flat, ended up realizing that, the best opportunity was for a seam. So I love that, that playmaking IQ, understanding what to do rather than, doing just what you're assigned. End up having a nice blitz pickup. When the offensive line actually blocks, he shows really solid vision. I appreciate how willing to lower the shoulder he is for extra yards. Again, some people don't like that as much. I do when I don't think he's going to break the tackle. He tracked a blitzer around a tackle. So I really love that. Like, he went up into the pocket to block someone. They ended up tracking, going around the offensive tackle on a stunt. He ended up tracking the defender around the tackle and still ended up making the block. So really like that. His O-line is doing him no favors. Ended up having a good lead block rep as well. Flashed some route running skill. And I said I still did not see very much high-end athleticism. And I just said overall, I'm a fan. And I really think that Noah Whittington has the athletic potential to be what Makhi Hughes kind of needs as his number two. So Makhi Hughes, like really, really good back. I mean, could talk about him like Bucky Irving. I'm not going to go that far because I think Bucky was special to me. I don't understand how he tested like he did, but Makhi Hughes, he's going to be a damn good back, and I think he'll be just super duper reliable. Number 3 is Jeremiyah Love. People are going to get pissed. I can guarantee you there's a 0.75 point gap difference between number 3 and number 1. Call him number 1. This is a group of 3 for the next 3, and they're all kind of different styles. So by all means, like Jeremiyah Love is the true every down back that you're going to love. No pun intended, but I mean, again, if you want to have him at number 1, I have no quarrels with you. That is perfectly reasonable. He is a damn good back. So let's talk about his game versus Penn State. He has really good get off. He actually kind of looks like a wide receiver as well. So fluid, really good athleticism. Good patience as well. And I just said it was an unbelievably heavy rotation of running backs. Missed tackle force ability did not get shown that game. And I said some solid lead blocks as well. Great job pushing for a touchdown. Ended up having a hurdle. And I said he can end up like churning and burning. Like great athletic potential for him. And again, he has everything that you want in a running back, except for the consistency of making people miss, which for me is a bit surprising. Like I don't understand when you have the IQ that he does, the balance that he does, the athleticism that he does, how he doesn't make more guys like genuinely miss at an NFL tackle rate. But I also think that it's far from out of the question for him to develop that. And if he does, my God, this guy is going to be in that RB1 blue chip territory. He is that close. And he has a great frame to him as well. But let's talk about a couple players. Like you guys hear from everyone about how good Jeremiyah Love is. This is not going to be a surprise that he's in this range. But it's just, I was shocked at how good of an athlete he was. And he can churn and burn for touchdowns. He takes it to the house. I think if he can break tackles a little bit more consistently, he's going to be even better. So Claiborne caught me really off guard. And you know what? Shout out to my guys on X, but I ended up actually watching NFL Stock Exchange's running back video before. I was like lurking and, studying the tight end group at the time, or at least I was just starting the running back room or running back evaluations. But somebody ended up commenting saying, please do your research and look at Claiborne. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy that someone's like, oh, you didn't watch this guy. Cause I know that Trev and Connor, I think each watched like 20 backs. And so I was like, all right, if I'm going to watch over 30, I better watch someone that's like, please do your research and look at this guy. Claiborne was like, holy shit. He is awesome. And I ended up starting out the game. So this is his game versus Clemson. I said, my Lord, he pops athletically. Like one of the best athletes I've seen at running back. Poor blocking led to a tackle for loss, but he did make the right choice to jump to a bounce out. So I really like the fact that he did the right decision. Just the blocking didn't end up leading to anything special, which, I mean, this year getting Failili Fa'amo might really help Claiborne's chance of being a superstar in terms of the statistics. I still think he got over 1,000 yards too, but I think he could be like a 1,500 yard back. Was this the guy I ended up talking about that with? I swear, I think I ended up talking about 1,500 yards somewhere, but I said he got a bit feisty with a corner. My God, I could have boosted this guy to the blue chip territory, and I would not be mad at that at all. This dude pisses defenders off, and I love it. Like, he genuinely is an asshole to defenders, and like he gets them fired up. Like, I love someone who has that energy, man. I would love to have him in Pittsburgh. I just don't think we'll spend a second round pick on a running back after spending a third. But regardless, great patience with an amazing burst through the hole. So I like seeing guys who can, take a little bit of time. He ended up choosing a double team instead of actually blocking a linebacker. So I don't understand that. Like, there was a linebacker coming, and then there was also an edge rusher. He ended up choosing to double team the edge rusher rather than going after the linebacker. I'm like, why? Like, I'm not a fan of that. Ended up not being a mistake that happened again. But I said poor blocking led to a low yard. Oh, the offensive line's poor blocking led to a low yards per carry, but it had nothing to do with his talent at all. I've yet to see a route requiring receiving skill, but that's on the offense, not necessarily him. The long mesh, so their system of the long mesh where they're pretty much like extremely long RPO, I ended up saying it pisses me off, which it does. He flies, no brainer there. This guy is an absolute athlete. I said, my one main issue with him is his change of direction. He has a hard time at very high speeds changing directions, which could lead him to stumbling out of bounds when trying to hit the corner. I said, funnily enough, he had a solid chip block. So that's pretty good. On Peter Woods, too, like 310 pounder. I said, long mesh is so BS. Actually has some solid blocking form. So that's kind of crazy. But I mean, he's 195. He's not necessarily supposed to be that. And I will say, Damon Claiborne, I say he's better Bishal Tootin. I could also comp him to a better Justice Hill. So if you guys are thinking that as well. But I said his vision is extremely good. And I said, my lord, this offensive line is ass. I said, I just had a solid blitz pickup as well. Can slightly over jump cut. And I ended up saying, what a nitpick. So, I mean, like I was talking about how Darius Taylor like really over jumps. Like Damon is like maybe a quarter step too far. He has the speed to break pursuit angles as well. I said, I'm worried about the lack of missed tackles forced. Again, I mean, I really do think that it's kind of hard to build up that consistency when the offensive line's not doing well. And I said he had a really solid in route with some catch in traffic. So like he ended up actually catching through contact. I said first blocking mistake due to him trying to anticipate a spy blitz. So ended up just pretty much waiting for the spy to end up coming in, and then ended up kind of negating the other mistakes on blockings from the guard. Ended up saying he ended up flashing a really nice spin move. So good to see that he can end up doing a spin. Will not be a primary blocker, but will work in a pinch with how great his motor is. So I love that about him. Double stiff arm. So he stiff armed 2 dudes in a row. Take note that this is also after he dislocated his kneecap versus NC State earlier in the year. I said, wowed, and he's a better version of Bishal Tootin. So, I mean, maybe that's why he didn't make as many people miss, especially in this particular game. But, I mean, with a dislocated kneecap, I mean, I could imagine there's still some swelling in there. Like, this dude's an absolute beast. It might explain the lack of agility on those high-end moves. It might explain the fact that he wasn't as efficient with missed tackles forced. But, I mean, just overall, I did not expect this guy to be a top 10 back for me. And I was like, oh, my Lord. And at number 1, we have Jahiem White. I was like, what in the hell? Jahiem White? My number 1 back? I got to see Jahiem White in person at the Frisco Bowl, him and CJ Donaldson, and I was wowed every time Jahiem White took a carry. And he ended up getting himself hurt, I believe, like in the first half, and I was like super bummed about it. But he ended up actually bouncing back. I believe he ended up taking carries later in that game as well. So power to him. I was like, oh no. But really, really fun back to see in person. And then the tape matched up as well. I mean, this guy is just awesome. So let's talk about his game versus Baylor. First off, the first 2 words are zoom, zoom. Like, this guy's up there with Damon Claiborne to be the best athlete in the class. And I say super agile, flashed a spin move. He's able to make cuts even at higher speeds. Missed tackle forced machine. I say good chop block as well. I mean, this is insane. This guy's 5'7", but has really good patience. I do not think he has super high level vision, but it is far from bad. One hand snag on a play that was called dead. So didn't get credit for it, but still good to see that he can catch it. And I said, I'm sorry, this dude is a superstar. Just carries dudes for extra yards. So talk about contact balance, generating extra yards. Like, I love it. And I said, IQ flash the receiver. And I just said elite, like, dive / chop blocks. And I said, overall, I'm just wowed. Jahiem White is, it will come back to bite me in the ass. But I do think he could be almost in like a Jahmyr Gibbs kind of role. If you have someone who's going to be a more gritty power back, like I was thinking for the Jets, talking about how they just didn't really have a Jahiem White style back there, like Breece Hall, obviously at the lower end of how he's been playing in recent memory. And then you also talk about Braylon Allen more as that straight line back. Jahiem White's kind of the dream guy to have as like the Jahmyr Gibbs for it. I just didn't realize he was this good. I mean, it really comes down to what really put him over the top was the fact that at high speed, unlike any other running back in the class, he could just change directions on a dime. And it's just such a dream to see someone like that, like the amazing athleticism, just amazing potential. And the fact that he continued to make guys eat dirt. And this is not the only Baylor game I watched. Like, I've mentioned Baylor several times in this episode. I've seen this apples to apples. It's not the Baylor defense that sucks. It's just Jahiem White that's that damn good. So keep that in mind. I mean, this will come back to bite me in the ass because I already know that Love will end up being the number one running back taken. I could have given him a +1 boost to just make myself look better, but at the same time, I owe you guys honesty. Not necessarily consistency, but consistency only in the honesty. Thank you so much for watching. Love you. See you on the far side. Peace.